Hello,
Welcome,
everybody. Welcome to
welcome.
another fantastic episode, no doubt,
Yeah.
of the Emotional Men podcast. My name is Taylor McCary. I'm a licensed therapist in Washington and Texas. Been doing this for 10 years. And with me, as always, is Pete Kingsley, licensed therapist and current PhD student. How you doing, Pete?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for asking.
Good. You're welcome. I do care, genuinely. The answer is important to me. You just went and saw the Vienna Boys Choir.
The Vienna Boys
How in the
Choir
world
came here. Yeah.
How? Why?
Well, they actually have 3 or 4 touring parts of their choir. Like there are 100 members of the choir, and they split them up and they tour around the world continuously, having like 500 concerts a year, all around the world. And it was world class. The director played the piano and directed the boys at the same time. Every now and then, some boys would grab a violin and come out in the front and play classical music along. And these are like 9 to 14-year-olds. So
Wow.
just unbelievable amount of talent on the stage. I was just blown away. Classical music.
Any indication there were any castrati?
It was, really hard to tell. Some of the boys could have been 30 years old for all I know. Yeah. And you're going somewhere tonight.
I am. I'm going on a date tonight. I was in a band when the first band that I was in Austin was a band that shall not be named because it did not end on good terms with me. However, me and the bass player remained very good friends, and he actually left the band at the same time I did, which I was kind of surprised by. Shout out Christopher. What up, big dog? I have never in my life called him big dog, and he listens to this and will probably go, what the hell are you talking about?
It came from a very spontaneous place. I think you can respect that.
Yes.
What's up,
Yes,
Master
exactly.
Sausage Seller? Crap. Where did that come from?
Yes, I hope Christopher feels as awkward hearing that as I hope you did saying it. He and his wife are moving to Boulder, Colorado. And so they're having a farewell thing at a bar by their house. So we're going to the Aristocrat tonight to say goodbye to Christopher and Jody. And I'm genuinely bummed they're going to go. I've always enjoyed my time with them. Jody cuts my hair, or has in the past cut my hair. I got to find someone else who will cut my hair and will guaranteed not do as good of a job because she's a fantastic hairstylist. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go to a bar and not drink with my wife, who also doesn't drink.
Well, I got an easy fix for your haircutting problem.
Okay.
I'll send you a straight razor.
That's not a fix though, Pete. The goal is to not be bald.
Okay, fine.
Pete is the only one who'll be able to see this. Let me show you my actual hairline, Pete.
Oh yeah, you tilt your chin up.
Yeah. I look legit bald.
Oh, Taylor put his hand on his hair and pulled it back and then tilted his chin up so it looks like his forehead is the top of his head. But he's doing quite well.
Well, here, look. How about this? You can see I'm
you have like a widow's peak going.
I got a bit of a widow's peak, yeah.
Okay.
This is riveting podcasting.
I got a joke for you.
Oh.
Yeah. I was going to make a joke about self-control. Talking about controlling your emotions. So I was going to write a joke about self-control, but I couldn't. I got so frustrated I threw my laptop across the room. There. That's it.
That took me a second. It took me a moment. That is the joke.
That is the joke. So when it comes to, actually our topic, I think, is a bit more nuanced than just self-control.
Today, yeah.
Yeah. So explain to me how you came to the idea of what we're going to talk about today.
I thought this was your idea.
Okay.
I will tell you.
I'm trying to do a professional segue. Okay. But
a professional segue, like we're professionals. So originally the idea was kind of to talk about how to manage your emotions when somebody else is having big emotions in front of you. Like if someone's losing their mind about something, how to keep yourself from losing your mind. And Pete and I did so much research getting ready for it. And in our hours of preparation, we realized that perhaps that was a limiting thing to be talking about. And so instead of just talking about emotional self-control and other people are being big, we're going to talk about Pete's preferred philosophical approach to life, which is Stoicism.
Okay, that's also going a bit far, I think. Since reading Marcus Aurelius, he wrote Meditations, and he was a huge Stoic. So from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism appeals to me because it gives you this perhaps false sense of control, so that there is no real good and bad thing that happens to you in your life. Really, events are completely neutral, and it is your interpretation of those events that give the flavor to your life, and that's appealing.
And we've already approached exactly why I dislike it. Today's gonna be a fun conversation because even that bothers me. Not because I think the idea of trying to regulate your emotions is a bad thing, but you've set up a system where if I don't do it well, it's because I've failed to do it.
Oh, like I interpreted it wrong. I'm thinking wrong. Therefore, it's my fault.
I think people kind of take Stoicism and go like, well, I'm having a big reaction. If I were truly Stoic, I wouldn't let that happen. Therefore, by having a big reaction, I'm bad. And that starts to become big reactions are bad, which starts to become emotions are bad, which it just like starts to cycle through all these, I think, fallacious arguments.
Well, that's why it's appealing, because you feel like I can. If something happens to you, you're playing, either you're the victim of circumstance, and that's actually a phrase in the lexicon of Americana. Oh, it's just a victim of circumstance. That means that there are bad things that happen to you, and you have, therefore, you're expected to become depressed, to become frustrated. You're expected to have this huge negative reaction. And if you don't, you're like, oh, I lost my job, on to the next one. People would kind of look at you sideways and be like, okay, do you actually understand what just happened to you? Like, yeah, I totally understand. And I choose to think that this is just a stepping stone in the college of life, university of life. And I don't know. I think the social expectation is a balance between being a victim of circumstance and also completely choosing the interpretation of circumstance.
So I think where I start to kind of, even that, I'm like starting to pick this apart now. So this might be, I don't want to say an argumentative episode because I don't know that we're actually going to argue about it, but I do think we're going to disagree a lot. And that actually kind of excites me a little bit.
You're always excited when they come to something contentious.
I love disagreement. It's not, see, here's the thing. Stoicism would say that disagreement is contentious if I have a big reaction. And I say, no, that's part of the fallacy, right? Me having a big reaction isn't me losing control. Me having a big reaction is me having a big reaction. They are not the same. Pete is considering this.
Yeah, I would look up at the ceiling and my eyes go back and forth thinking about this. Having a big reaction, therefore, well, you're talking about the translation that you have for your own big reactions. And that might be where Marcus Aurelius falls short, in that he would say big reactions means you've interpreted something yourself. So he means for people to translate external things to themselves, not for them to translate internal things, if that makes sense. What B.F. Skinner called them private events. B.F. Skinner was a behaviorist. He only measured what he could observe. B.F. Skinner did. But he still alluded to what he called private events, things that he knows happen, and yet only one person can observe them. They have to happen. And I think he made that one concession. He called them private events. And I don't think that Marcus Aurelius meant to apply Stoicism to private events. It was like his Stoicism got taken into minimalism. And so you have people who like, I can live in a clay pot on the streets of, Rome. And the one great minimalist, I forgot his name, but he owned a cup. That's what he owned, one cup, until he saw that a rat was drinking out of a puddle and he felt convicted. And so he got rid of his cup, gave his cup away. And that's taken to extreme, to where you're like, therefore, every bad thing that happened to me is not really a bad thing. And you kind of give away your life. And here in emotional,
I hear that. And that's like incentivizing suffering.
Yes, exactly. And we are, that dives far into one extreme end of the spectrum, I think. And here in Emotional Men, we're talking about, we're really interested in the depth of the emotion and experiencing the experience. And to be a Stoic,
the exquisite vividness,
as John Kabat-Zinn would say, mindfulness. But I think Marcus Aurelius wasn't just about being completely emotionless. Let me read some of what he said. Of course, we talked
Before
about.
you do that, I am
Yeah.
curious what initially, even before we get into this, what for you has been like why Stoicism as a philosophy as opposed to like I don't know, like phenomenology
Hmm.
or other kinds of American existentialism, or like why Stoicism for you? Why has that gripped you so well?
Um, that is a great question. It reminds me a lot of people who are the most self-disciplined in
Mm,
my life, who big things happen. Of course, having a military background as a kid and now as a member, um, a big something that really impresses me is when something big and bad happens, and you tell the leadership and my squadron commander or whatever, and they just kind of stop for a minute and they'll think
mm,
about what's happening. And we've talked about being a contrarian leader and how Lincoln would delay and tell stories and not give an answer the next day until the next day. And so I always admire that, because me, being an emotional man, want to reflect the bad thing. I want to feel the urgency. I express urgency. I do wear my emotions on my sleeve. So maybe Stoicism caught hold in me because it helps me become a little more of what I want. I want to be able to pause and say, this thing happened. Is it a bad thing? Well, it's the thing is just what it is. We got into a car wreck. My hood is smoking. The other person is flipping out. I'm like, we got into an accident. That happened. That is. Am I going to start crying? Do I freak out? Do I run around? I could if I wanted to. What will help in this situation? What is the appropriate response to this situation, rather than what am I going to do to express my emotions? So I'm really good at expressing my emotions, but in order to take a step and to say that this thing happened and look at it objectively is not something I'm good at. Maybe that's why I look at Stoicism
mm.
attractively.
See, I hear that, and I again, like I just think, okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that there's a right way and a wrong way to feel things. And that if I have a big thing that I feel like, let's say I do get into a car accident and I start crying because I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Am I doing the wrong thing by being scared and crying?
No, no, no. It's not that feeling the wrong thing is the wrong thing. It's doing the wrong thing. And I believe that there is a helpful, well, you can call it right and wrong, but what I'm really mean is productive and non-productive responses. And Stoicism, I think, would argue that there are productive responses and
Sure.
non-productive responses. Now, if I sit in my car and I cry because I'm scared and I'm terrified and I'm shaking, that may be productive. That might be
Okay.
cathartic. Cathartic meaning a release of tension. All of a sudden, I had this huge adrenaline rush. Now I'm letting it go, and I just weep. And then, do I become a victim of circumstance, or do I look at the circumstance objectively? And of course, extreme. And also, Marcus Aurelius talked about being so objective. I also like the way he talks about death. I We've talked about the Buddhist meditation of I'm going to die, and you sit there and you
Mm-hmm.
use that mantra I'm going to die, and work through all the emotional reactions to the realization I'm going to die. And that's a lifelong struggle. I'm going to die. Marcus Aurelius talked about the to accept impermanence and mortality.
I think
Just
I,
is.
I these things are useful things, and I do incorporate versions of these. I can't help but notice how much of this is geared towards men. And like I've never heard of I've met women who
Oh,
want to be more
interesting.
stoic, but
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of women who are super big on stoicism. Like I think about, for example, like my daughter who is 9 years old. If she gets a bit of bad news, or if she gets sad or hurt or scared, she just starts crying, and she tries her best to control it, but the tears they come.
Mm-hmm.
My wife certainly has at times just started crying for reasons that I don't fully understand. Would Stoicism say that because they can't control it, they're wrong? I certainly think that's how it comes across a lot of times. And so men will use this Stoic ideal of like being free of of how to say this. They don't lose control of their emotions, and therefore that's the right way to do it. And anybody who doesn't have full control over their emotions is failing. It's very male centric. It's very, it feeds into like some very toxic masculinity things of like big boys don't cry and all that garbage. I feel like it just sets up a way of being for men and women to interact that makes the women have to be the bad guy if they don't follow this strict stoicism. That bothers me a lot.
Yeah, the strictness of the stoicism would be a catching point for me, because I can't deny that we have, like Skinner said, private events, and emotion is important. And I think,
Which, by the way, sounds like bathroom. I'm gonna go have a private event.
I'm gonna go have a private event.
Take a dump, man.
Yeah,
just own it.
No. Private events, meaning only something you can observe. It's something that happens inside of you. Now, granted, I'm not necessarily an expert in Stoicism. I've studied it quite a bit, and I like it because it gives me a sense of control, and that is also seductive. If you feel like you have control,
but it's not true.
Yes, but it may not be true. You say,
That's what bothers me. Right? Like, I need the truth. For better or for worse, if I know something isn't true, if I know it's not true, I cannot abide it. And this is, I think I go too far in this direction, and I have to own that. But if there's a sense of control that's given by a thought process or a system, and that system is giving me control only in giving me order as opposed to control, a way of ordering things, but it doesn't actually give me control, then it feels like it's a lie. And I think there's a difference between a false sense of security and a lie, but I do think that Stoicism for me veers more towards the lie, because it's based on the idea that I can control this. You can't.
When we talk about control, it's either control of the car wreck, like, do I actually have control that this happened? No, I can't go back in time. The control that Stoicism demands is self-control. So when somebody is screaming at you and hitting your car window angrily, are you going to scream back at them and hit the window on your side? What is the appropriate reaction? And I don't mean to say that like there never is an appropriate emotional reaction too. You often hear people say, "Oh, he's so stoic," as if he's a statue, as if they're like completely emotionless. But I would say Stoicism is not doesn't necessarily need to be completely bound by logic, if that makes sense.
It does not. Tell me more.
Stoicism means
to me it doesn't make sense, I should say.
Well, in my understanding, so other people who've studied Marcus Aurelius will probably gawk at that, because it is about logic. My understanding of Stoicism is that I have to have a reason for what I'm doing. And so if I can, I keep going with the car wreck analogy, but it's big emotions there. So you have big emotions, so you just hit somebody, and you're coming down an adrenaline rush. It would be acceptable to me to wear my emotions on my sleeve. It would not be acceptable to me to stay in my car shaking when I can see that someone is hurt. That would not be acceptable to me, even though I am terrified. If I'm terrified and someone is hurt, the logical reason, the thing that I would accept would be to go out and help that person, regardless of my terror, regardless of my big emotions. And it doesn't mean that I stuff them down or that I pretend that they aren't there at all. Is that you do it anyway.
Is that what you're saying? Because it sounds like what you're saying is I'm having a big emotion. I should stuff it down so I can go do the right thing.
No, there is no courage without fear. It means I have to.
But again, that implies there's a right and a wrong way to handle emotion. And the right way to handle terror is to shove it down. And I got to own this, if there's somebody else who needs help. And what I'm not saying is don't be brave. Like if you're in a car wreck and you're super scared and you see the other cars catching on fire and you have the wherewithal to get the other person out of the car before it explodes into flames, please, by all means, right? Absolutely. And realistically, that's probably not going to happen. And where do we get the limitations around the right and the wrong response to the situation? Where do we get the right and the wrong limitations around how we interact with it? how big the emotion is supposed to get before it gets
Yes,
too big.
how is it supposed to get? So let me ask you this: if you have a client who comes in, and they, let's say, something big happened in their lives, they just got fired, or heaven forbid, they found out that their spouse was being unfaithful, and they don't come in and slowly work up to the emotional distress. They come into your office with this high emotional distress. They come in, they say, "Oh, I got to tell you, I can't believe it." And they close the door and they sit down. They're like, sit down. I got to tell you. I have to tell you. What is, and they are just weeping, and they're just, and they throw their backpack on the couch or on the floor. How do you react?
I let them go.
But I'm not talking about, well, so is your emotions at that point? What do you think your emotions are when somebody is, I'm sure you've had this scenario, people worked up in your office.
Oh, totally.
Okay. So what is your emotional reaction?
Well, those are two different questions. Are you asking what my emotion is or how I react to it?
That's my understanding of Stoicism. Exactly. What you just said is exactly my understanding of Stoicism.
Gotcha. I don't know what my emotion is because I don't know. In this hypothetical, there's different ways people do it. I do know for myself that I don't respond well to people slamming doors, and I have yelled at people for slamming doors.
Really? Like, reacting like, "Hey, don't slam my door."
Yeah, like I had one time a lady found out what we had what we talked about, Latina D-Day, Disclosure Day, and this is back in Seattle.
Latina meaning our last guest that we had.
Yeah, our last guest we talked about. Yeah, and so she found out the extent of the cheating, and she got up and she slammed that door harder than anybody has ever slammed that door. Like, I had to like pry it open because it went past the door frame. It was pretty amazing. She's a pretty tiny lady who did that.
So you were in the office with the two spouses,
the two of them,
and one of them confessed and the other left.
Yes.
Okay.
Left is very generous, a generous phrasing of that. She slammed that door. And part of the problem is I'm in that moment so very aware of how other people are in therapy in the offices around me who hear that explosion, and they're now reacting to it. And like, I didn't even think, yelled and I said, "That is not okay to slam my door. Do not do that again." So there you go. That's how I have reacted. So I know that kind of stuff. So what I tell my clients is I'm here for it. This is a bomb shelter. And if it's a bomb shelter, then that means, by all means, blow things up. But there are some rules here. I will not be unsafe to you. You will not be unsafe to me.
I like that.
Right.
It's a bomb shelter. And we're talking about safety, and you mentioned she slammed a door. What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean safety? I mean,
the safety is, so if you have worked with enough people, Pete, that you'll understand this. If you're working with somebody who has high trauma, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a very loud door slam happens, that will shut the session down.
Yeah. Okay.
Like gangbusters. It's game over. Right. And so that particular office, I was here. There's an office to my left, to my right. Next to them was another office down the hall, straight across, around the corner. Like, there were 6 or 7 other therapy sessions happening in that moment that her slamming the door impacted and may have completely derailed. And that to me is not fair. You know, it's not fair that her big moment is overshadowing these other people who have nothing to do with her. So I reacted.
Okay.
She came back in. Eventually she apologized. And I think the next week she came back and brought me a flower. She's like, "I'm so very sorry." It was very, very sweet and lovely. But I mean, in the thing you're posing, how do I react to big reactions? Generally, I just let them go as long as they don't do anything that's disruptive to other people.
Okay. That makes sense. If we're talking about then controlling other people, I had a big epiphany when I was doing some training about working with children, and the trainer said, "You cannot control what children say, what comes out of their mouth. You cannot force them to sleep. You can't control when they sleep. You cannot control when and what they will eat off their plate." What was it? It was eat, sleep, and say. And we try so hard as adults to force words to come out of their mouths. And we use different tactics to teach children. But that epiphany I had that, like, you really can't. If a kid is that angry and they can lay in their bed awake all night long, they will not sleep. They don't want to. They'll get up out of their bed, whatever. You cannot force them to sleep. You just make the environment such that they could. And you can't force them. Well, I mean, you can force them, but it's kind of like how force them to eat. But how much you want to force them, tie them down, and shove things down their throat. And then,
Hello, trauma.
yeah, exactly. Like, how much of this force do you want to use? And I realized that is true for a lot of parts of my life, to where I cannot force the things that I wish I could. I want to control how people around me feel. And so I do everything I can thinking that I have this control, and the only control I really have is how I react to them. Like, it's really the only control I have.
I think even that is within a very slim barrier, very slim boundary, right? Like, I can control how I react in as much as I'm in control of myself during my reaction. If I get shot right now, if a bullet somehow comes through my window and hits me in my shoulder, I'm not going to go, oh, how very interesting. It appears the bullet has entered my flesh. What will probably happen is I go, ah, shit,
Yeah.
motherfucker. I mean, like, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And like, I will probably, and actually, this is a true story. This is maybe a good example of this. When I was at my last job that I had where I worked for somebody else, a man came in with a knife and tried to kill one of the girls. He stabbed her through her arm into her chest, right? And you often wonder how you handle emergency situations. And I learned that day what I'm like in an emergency situation. And so I learned about myself that I actually am pretty calm in emergencies. I'm really good in emergency. But I also watched a room full of, I think there were 9 girls in that room, 9 teenage women, right? And we're talking between the ages of 14 and 17, who just watched one of their friends get stabbed. And let me tell you what, man, like, some of them reacted big, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Were they wrong in their big reactions? Were they wrong? One of the girls, especially, what ended up happening was one of the girls had just broken up with her boyfriend that day to start dating another girl that lived in the house with us. And that girl that was the new girlfriend texted the ex and said, I'm giving her stuff that you never could. So he showed up to kill her, right? That's what happened. So when the door opened, she saw who it was and screamed, run. He came in fast and stabbed the girl. She survived. And then the girl whose ex-boyfriend it was watched my staff member like put him in a chokehold. She was ex-military police. Thank goodness.
Wow.
Just completely constrained him, pushed him on the couch. And then I'm in there and my hands are shaking. I'm like, there's a bloody knife on the floor. It was crazy. And my brain went super quiet real fast and said, what's going to happen is you're going to get these girls out of here while you call the police. While you're doing that, your staff member, make sure she's okay. And I said, hey, are you okay? And she's like, I've got him, boss. Get him out of here. And I went, okay.
You had
and
a
then my brain
very
went real
good
quiet
manager
again.
in your head.
Yeah. And my manager brain said, you're going to call 911. You're going to be calm and you're going to get these girls out of here. And the girl whose ex-boyfriend it was on the floor, like hands like this, like covering her face, just screaming. And I remember thinking, she's really not going to enjoy what I'm about to do. And so I looked her dead in the eye and I had to yell her name. I said, you're standing up and we're leaving right now. Go. And she kind of snapped out of it when, we got out of the house. We all reacted in different ways. I think Stoicism, as well I understand it, would say that some of those reactions were too big because what was in their control? They certainly couldn't control that this man decided to come with a knife. They couldn't control the violence that took place. It happened so fast. This is someone they knew, someone who had been in that house many times. Every single one of those girls knew this boy by face. There were a lot of unknowns. I cannot believe he didn't come with a gun. I thank the heavens he didn't come with a gun. But were their reactions too big because they were not in control and then they lost control? That's my problem with Stoicism, to say that those girls were wrong for freezing. I disagree with that.
I feel like I'd have to go back to Aurelius and see what he says. Being a philosophy, a lot of this stuff he presents is in retrospect. Like, do you continue to be a victim to your perceptions of whatever happened to you? Not necessarily like in the moment. Do you need to logically analyze? You losing more blood than you can viably maintain? Like, in the moment, do you react the way you can? Just talk about being social and acting with compassion. I mean, he's not completely emotionless, but I would wonder, is this a philosophy that pertains to analysis of your life, or is it momentary reaction?
That's a very fair question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, neither do I. I can't assume to know everything about Stoicism. What I do believe though is when you're working with other people, if you respond quietly, calmly, and like not logically, that has a bad connotation to it, but thoughtfully, maybe. I have found that in session, even with the most regular emotions, and even in the story you just shared, people need that. And one of the questions I had coming into this episode of like regulating yourself or reacting to others' big emotions, something I want to know constantly is, what should I react? Should I mirror their big reactions to show that I'm empathetic and like I'm on your side?
Do you smell that? Oh, it smells like should in here. Did you just should yourself?
Yes, that's right.
Get that shit out of here, dude. Spit that shit out of your mouth.
No, we don't should.
No, no.
Yeah. No, well, that's one of the lessons you learn too. Is normal is a setting on the dishwasher.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah.
But wondering, am I doing the right thing? And of course, right and wrong are value statements that depend on the philosophy you follow. But I've never gone awry if you are the one who are reacting to other people's crises quietly and compassionately and thoughtfully. Mm-hmm. There was a study, if I can,
real quick, actually. Sorry,
cut off my study. Science, Taylor, science.
I'm actually going to quote a study.
Oh man, you should have told me. My heart. Okay, go for it.
That's right. It's a red letter day. So you and I, as you know, Peter, are working on an academic paper right now about emotional systems and how they interact with people. And one of the studies that I read as we were putting it, if we're co-authoring it, was about this concept of emotional contagion, which is the idea that how one person emotionally processes out loud and in a visible way their emotional experience of a thing, that ripples through, and other people will glom onto that and use that as their guiding force for how they are going to react.
Like a guidepost for how bad the situation is. I'm going to see their reaction and use that as my baseline.
I mean, like in that scenario with the girls, I was calm, which meant I guess it gave some of them permission to fully freak out because I was in control and they didn't need to be in control. But some of them, one of the girls, I'll never forget this, ran to her room and got a towel and did a compression on her friend's arm. I'll never forget that. She pushed past her fear. But I think about this too. I was in a band with a guy who was a cop, and there's another guy in the band, and we were talking about these big reactions to things. And this guy, the keyboard player, he's like, I've been in life and death situations too. I was not calm. I was shocked by how not calm I was. I thought I would be, and I wasn't. And he kind of blamed himself for that. He beat himself up for not being calm. And, the cop was like, well, you haven't had any training. And he's like, yeah, I mean, like Taylor was in that situation. He was fine, but he had training. I was like, I didn't have any training. But was I right? Or was the other guy wrong?
Right and wrong. Again, we're getting to the value statements. If like honesty was big, I've always been told I wear my emotions on my sleeve, which is why Stoicism appeals to me, as I said, because I can have emotional reactions. I look down. People know when I'm sad. People know when I'm happy. I remember being in military training, and one of my criticisms, I was standing at attention in front of my flight commander, and he goes, "You wear your emotions on your sleeve," like an insult. Like, you need to fix that. Mm-hmm. You wear your emotions on your sleeve. And I can see in a military setting, perhaps that was not preferable, but it always bugged me because that's not military. That's me. That's just Pete. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I was talking.
Did you shout, "Sir, yes, sir"?
You don't do a sir sandwich. You just go, "Yes, sir." Anyway, I was talking to my brother about it years later and how I'm trying to work on controlling myself. That's what I said. And he said, "You know what? I prefer to be able to read people. I like it when I can tell when someone's sad or when someone's happy. I prefer that." And that was also convicting. So I was like, why didn't I critique what I was told? I just accepted it now as a critique of myself. But in my brother's critique of it, I started thinking and thinking, I can like that about myself. I can like that I'm easy to read, and I can be.
Dude, yeah.
My dad is very
That's
stoic
the glue,
and
right?
logical. I can be goofy and silly, and if someone insults me, I can be sad and be like, that makes me really sad, and say something like that. So in any case, putting value statements on something really depends on your philosophy. Am I to say good or bad? That big reaction. my brother values honesty in all senses, almost ad nauseum. Like if a Nazi comes to your house and says, "Where are the Jews?" you say, "They're in my attic." If you get them, that's up to you.
Oh.
That kind of thing. Like that's your morality, but I'm going to tell the truth. Okay, maybe he's not that far. I shouldn't say that. Sorry, brother. But
so what I'm hearing Pete say is his brother's a Nazi sympathizer. Anyway, please keep going.
No, but being so honest that it puts you could even put yourself at harm because you're that honest. So if I am honest about my emotions, you'd prefer that. Your friend who crumples to the ground and holds his eyes and cries in high stress situations is being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Versus being stoic. And they're not good or bad. As we've been talking about good or bad value statements, it's like, well, what do you prefer?
What it is.
What do you think is productive?
I think the only place I push against it is because my understanding of Stoicism is that it's always a choice. That there is always a choice to be made in the moment.
I see. So the guy who crumbled on the floor, he even didn't want to do that. He wished he could have been different.
Yeah.
And
he was shocked that he did do it.
That's right. So you're saying sometimes that's just your reaction. It's not a choice. It's not a thoughtful thing. Just your reaction.
PTSD is a great antithesis to Stoicism. Like again with the knife, like the guy came in about 3 days later. I woke up from a dead sleep, and I swear not, but let your convictions be yay, yay, nay, nay, yay, yay. I saw a dude standing by my bed with a knife, and I jolted awake, and then he was gone. Right? It's a PTSD moment.
Yeah.
I didn't choose that. The thing wasn't happening. It was about a past event, and I had a big emotional reaction to it. A PTSD spits in the face of Stoicism.
You're talking about uncontrollable emotional reactions to stimuli. Just that's what your body reacts to.
Exactly. Clearly, there was nobody there as I'm still sitting here. I thought there was, though, and it terrified me. Because my wife was in bed next to me, and like my kid was in the next room. Like there were a lot of things went through my head really fast. And then he was gone, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going crazy. That's what's happening."
Yeah, I don't think Stoicism demands that you don't feel fear. It just means that you interpret it for what it was, and you act appropriately, and you are therefore more compassionate towards humans, as Marcus would say, talking about human interaction and compassion.
It did increase my compassion for PTSD. That moment taught me a lot more than any amount of sitting in a therapy room could. And I now feel bad because I cut you off when you were going to cite one of your studies.
Oh, yes. So we kind of gotten on the back and forth between Stoicism and emotional expression. There was, and one of the questions that you had in the green room was, what's the use of emotional control, if we dare call it that? I don't know. Emotional control is kind of overarching. What use does it have? In 2011, there was a study that used 4 randomized controlled trials that measured people's reaction to perceived self-control of the other. So it was kind of like something big happens and they have 2 people. One person reacts and the other person is self-controlled. And they measure the person who reacted. What is your perception of the person who had self-control? The first 2 experiments revealed that participants detected another person's trait of self-control. Then 2 more experiments revealed that participants also detected the temporary depletion of another person's self-control. Basically, we can tell. Like that just means I can tell when you have it, and I can tell when you're losing it. These 2 studies confirmed the authors' predictions, their hypothesis that the perceived trait and state of self-control increased people's judgment of the other person's trustworthiness. They linked self-control to trustworthiness. Now, that's not necessarily an earth-shattering finding, but it was an interesting link between 2 latent variables, trustworthiness and self-control.
Yeah.
And then you have to do more analysis of why. Why do you think someone who's not reactive as much would be more trustworthy? And you can
it's an interesting question.
On that.
I mean, and that's, I think, how you see these people who just are dead inside, who don't react to things. People follow them. Maybe there's an interesting correlation there, right? Like, I don't feel anything, so I don't have any big reactions, so I'm always calm, so people trust me. I mean, that's pure supposition. That
sounds like
no
someone
study
who's
backing that
someone
up.
who's burned out and like in an office and they just want to leave, and you don't know that they're depressed and they're horrible. They're just quiet. And
the movie Office Space.
Yes,
this is it.
And you don't.
I don't care.
People gravitate towards
manager.
him, and they're like, "Wow, he's such a great leader." No, he's actually apathetic.
She just does not care.
Does not care one way or the other. And that makes you look like you have self-control, but it's actually internal deadness.
Yes.
So maybe there's a balance then between emotional expression to express that you are a human with but expressing it appropriately, so you're not crumpling. Like all of a sudden someone runs down and says that we have this huge accounting error and half of this department is going to lose their jobs because I just found this huge thing. You as the manager, you can say, that sounds like a really big problem. Come into my office, we'll talk about it. And you sit down and you may find out that it's not so bad, or you might find out that it is pretty bad. But jumping up and down, like, what the crap, and trying to grab the papers out of the accountant's hand and like, what do you mean? And you all shout and run into your office and slam the door. Everyone else on the floor is going to wonder, like, what the heck? Our office just exploded.
Yeah.
So I think you can't express it, but.
I mean, as we're talking, one of the things that's kind of popping up in my head is, I think this is true of most philosophical underlying approaches you take to life. There are real limitations to them, and they just can't be all. Yeah. I don't know that there's a single all-encompassing philosophical ground that everybody can stand on that will meet every need. I can't imagine that it really exists.
No, yeah.
Cough, cough. Questions about religion. Cough, cough. Never mind.
Yeah, welcome we welcome any troll statements about religion. That's why it always bothered me when somebody, whether it's Stoicism or Christianity or it is, psychoanalysis, whatever schema you subscribe to, if somebody comes to you and it's like, okay, let's talk, and I give something and I quote one of my beliefs, if I quote Freud or I quote Marcus Aurelius, and they're like, okay, oh, whatever, just dismiss that without using any of that. Can you explain to me this thing? And I think, well, no, I can't dismiss my entire belief system in order to discuss this issue with you. You came to me, and this is my basis. So I believe Stoicism comes into play, and psychotherapy comes into play. Not necessarily psychoanalysis for me, but a lot of things come into play. Not
that there's anything wrong with psychoanalysis. It works really well for some people. I have a client who's a doctor who I think actually is going to hear me say this. So but I'll be fully honest. I am always honest, if nothing else, even to a fault. The way that she talks about it, I go, that makes sense. I can see why a psychoanalytic approach and psychodynamics, that's her thing, actually. Maybe next time I talk to her, I didn't say psychodynamics, you idiot.
No, you can edit all this together, so it just sounds like you said psychodynamic the whole time.
That's right. But psychodynamics is not something that I know a lot about. It's not something that I've studied a lot. It's not something I've ever been interested in learning more about, just because it doesn't immediately grab me. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean it's bad and doesn't work. But there are limitations, right? My approach, my existential, hermeneutical, phenomenological, blah, 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 there are real limitations to that. Sometimes you need to drop how it feels and talk about the science. Oh, I can't believe I just said that on recording.
Wow. The whole world's going to know. My son,
I hate what you've done to me, Pete.
My son actually asked me if we do any live podcasts, like publish as we talk. And I said, no, we don't. We always edit it after. But man, right now, I wish we did.
I'll keep it in just for you.
The internet could have heard you say science is important.
But 3 people, because we're losing them.
That's all right. When it comes to emotional expression, then, what is the balance? It seems like we always come to the end of these things saying, well, it depends. So here we're approached with a huge catastrophe. Either the face of the other, someone comes to you and it's a legitimate crisis. Like for me, I was doing therapy in Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, and we had the largest, youngest population of security forces. The largest, youngest. We had like 2 security forces groups, just thousands of kids, and their first assignment would be to babysit a hole in the ground. For 3 years. You cannot look at your phone. You can't fall asleep. You have to be aware. And if someone walks up to your car and you're distracted, you get paperwork and you're disciplined, whatever. It is hard. It is hard work, and nothing but respect for those defenders up there in Minot Air Force Base. But they would come to therapy oftentimes because something big had happened in their lives, like my girlfriend back in Alabama broke up with me because we've been apart for 2 years. And to say that was the biggest thing that's happened in their lives might be legitimate, but they'd have this huge emotional reaction to something I would see of like, okay, the one, like you've had this one girlfriend for 2 years and you guys broke up and okay. But in any case,
Mhm.
I can't completely dismiss the importance of a huge reaction. I can't, sorry, I forgot where I started from. Forgot where I started from. The big reactions that people have if they came in, like throwing things, sitting down, up and down, just pacing my office with loud voices. I don't think they expect me to react that way. I think they would expect me to be the calm listener. But of course, that's in a professional therapy setting.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's true. I just, by the way, looked up where Minot Air Force Base is. Wow. There is nothing there, is there?
There is nothing there. And yeah, people's perceptions play a lot into their hardship at Minot. Like one guy would say, "There's nothing to do here." I hear that a lot. There's nothing to do here. And when you leave the Air Force Base, it's north of town. You turn right to go down to the town, and there's the bar and everything. And so I asked this kid, I said, "There's nothing to do here." And he said, and I said, "Have you ever turned left out of the base? Have you ever just turned left?" And he's like, "No." There's a quiet moment. He goes, "What's up there?" And I go, "That's the point." that's my point. Like, what is up there? What is it when you turn left? He's like, "Canada." I'm like, "Uh-huh. Yeah. Like the border. Do you know what's up there?" "No." Okay. So your reaction, your perception of there is nothing to do here was directly challenged, and then he started to exhibit curiosity. I would say,
which is like, what a gift.
Yeah,
In any
yeah.
situation, curiosity is anyway.
To go from hopelessness and nothing is an extreme word. Nothing means that's the end of the story. Nothing has a period after it. There is nothing. And I said, "Well, what if you turn left?" And that opened a lot. Well, what's up there? That's the point. I've turned left and I've done things up there, but I'm not going to answer that for you. You head up towards
what is left?
They have up.
It looks like a lot of nothing.
Yeah, well, they have something called the Friendship Gardens, which you can go to at the border of Canada and the U.S., and it is beautiful. Every spring they plant acres and acres of these flowers, and then they have themes. When we went up there, it was the Wizard of Oz theme, so they had the yellow brick road in like yellow tulips, and they had the figures from the Wizard of Oz in flowers on the ground. It was beautiful. Anyway. He wouldn't have known that if he never turned left.
The Friendship Garden.
Yeah. Anyway, in a lot of ways in our lives, we say there is nothing, nobody, never. And Stoicism says, really?
Okay, so you're positing that Stoicism is a form of curiosity that is grounded in small a reaction as you can muster.
Yes, I think Marcus's one of Marcus Aurelius's premises is that emotion is the antithesis to logic. Even though he promotes some emotional reactions like compassion and intersocial connectedness and stuff, like emotional connection with people, I think there was this belief that big reactions mean that you can't think at the same time. Like even in our discussion, we're kind of positing that big reactions mean that your thinking has shut down. And I think I don't know. Well, it might be true. Big reactions. If you curl up in the fetal position and all your body is just going into like survival mode, you're not thinking.
I disagree with that. I think you're thinking very clearly. I just
don't
think
your
I think your thinking is very limited. Anybody's reaction, right? Like that girl who was sitting on the ground, covering her face and screaming, was definitely not going, blank slate. She was definitely thinking somebody might have just been murdered because of me. That's what she was thinking.
Yeah.
It wasn't like her brain turned off.
Which really is thinking. Yeah. And if she knew that the person had been apprehended, then there is no action that she requires. If she's just starting the processing journey of what just happened, and she knows that the threat has been taken down, then maybe,
hopefully.
Maybe the way her sitting and covering her face and shaking is thinking. at the same time.
Maybe, this is like the back half of this. I left that job because of what happened that day, and not just because of the murder, but like the leadership of that place was garbage. And the example I give kind of plays into this story we're talking about, which is this girl had she liked drama in general. She enjoyed dramatic things. Obviously, someone getting stabbed almost to death in front of you is not you enjoying drama. But we took her out of that house, took her to a different place, and she was like, I need to go to the police station. I've got to file a report. I've got to make sure we get this guy locked up. And the person the director of the entire center said, hey, I know you like drama, but I need you to calm down.
Oh,
and I went, excuse me, what did you just say? And she said the same thing. She went, what did you just say to me? And then this lady goes, I said, I know you like drama, but you need to calm down. And I had to physically pull her away, the kid, and sit her down. Oh my gosh.
She told this survivor of an attempted murder, the witness of the attempted murder, to calm down. She said calm down.
Because she liked the drama too much. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know. I mean, from years of experience, telling someone to calm down works.
Every time.
Every time. Just tell them to calm down.
It's 100%. Especially teenage girls. Works really well with them.
Wow. Calm down. I know you like drama. Calm down. Holy
I can't
cow.
even fathom. Right, but there's the question, right? Like that's a stoic approach. I know you like the drama. In my mind, that's how I view stoicism. I know you like the drama, but calm down. No, that is a completely useless way of approaching that situation. This isn't a question about controlling how big you're
exactly. And stoicism wouldn't be about controlling the other. This is about controlling yourself. So it'd be about the scenario. If that girl is screaming at the director or the manager would say, "This screaming is happening right now," and it would be like, "This is."
What can I learn from this moment?
Yeah. It'd be like, you are very upset with this. And I think this is a very upsetting situation that is true. But to twist it towards her and say, you get upset really easily, or like, you like drama. Now you're turning the analysis towards the person instead of the situation. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to forcibly control someone else based on, what the two-legged stool of logic you're trying to stand on.
Maybe this is where my issue, I think you're naming an issue that I have with this, that I'm beginning to see where it's not actually stoicism. And I think that stoicism leads to this issue, which is, I believe in this, therefore I'm going to impose my philosophical thing onto you. I would try and do my best to be calm. You are not trying to be calm, therefore you are handling this incorrectly, because stoicism says that I should be calm, therefore you should be calm. I don't like at all. But what you're saying is that's not true stoicism. True stoicism is a curiosity about how we experience ourselves and an acceptance of how other people are experiencing themselves in our proximity.
Yes, exactly. And if we're going to go back to, so if we talk about ethos, pathos, and logos, ethos is the character of somebody, the ethics. Pathos is the emotion, like, I don't know where that comes from. Pathos. And then logos is reason and logic. And so if I think that stoicism would just address pathos and logos. Sorry. The ethics and the logic. You just talk about the two parts of that three-legged stool, the ethos and the logos. How do I want my character to be in this situation? And what is the logic behind that? The pathos is going to be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say standing on a two-legged stool of logic, I guess I should have said logic and character. There's certain times of this podcast where I find that you've said something, or like there's this big question that I need to stop, and it leads to moments of dead air.
That's like, okay. I always edit them out. I just cut those ones out.
Nice. Cut this too.
No, I it's an interesting thing, a little peek behind the curtain in the editing process. Trying to figure out, sometimes somebody will say something. I know, like the episode we did with James, with my little brother, the doctor, there were a couple times where somebody asked a question and there was a very pregnant pause, or with Judge Peterson, the same thing happened, where removing the pregnant pause changes the tone of what the answer is. And so
Oh, that's interesting. You don't want
I
it to
don't.
go too fast.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, this is like therapy 101, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't need
Yeah.
to keep talking for the time to be used effectively. Interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I feel like you wrote down 5 central ideas for meditations. We haven't, excuse me, we haven't even touched those.
Oh, well, we've touched on a few of them um, if we come up in the discussion, but I'll just hit on the headings of each of these 5 points.
So
First,
this is what, at its core, like the nutshell version of what
of
Stoicism
Stoicism.
is.
Yeah, Stoicism. So I'm going to read these, and you think about how it applies to reacting to a big situation.
Okay.
1, focus only on what you can control. 2, perception shapes experience. We talked about that in terms of how do you perceive what is happening. 3, live according to reason and virtue. 4, that's virtue meaning ethos. 4, accept impermanence and mortality. And 5, practice compassion and social duty. Those are the 5 points of Stoicism that I wrote down recently.
So what was the question that you wanted me to focus on? How would these apply to a...
Yeah, how does this apply to a big reaction? And it's interesting that the stories that you've told, and even as I know you in clinical practice where you explain it, you don't immediately rush into big reactions yourself.
Yeah. I think it kind of weirds people out sometimes. They'll say like, yeah, that's when I found a severed head. And I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of freaky. Like, well, that's it. That's your reaction?
Exactly.
Well,
yes. Yeah. And then people would be like, why are you so stoic? And you're like, how dare you?
I just slap them across the face as hard as I can.
Stoic.
Don't you ever say that to me again.
Jump up and down, put them in a suplex. Not stoic. Yeah. But but the question then is, can you feel big feelings? And when you express big feelings in a big way, is it wrong or bad? And I don't know if you can say that coming out of Stoicism.
I mean, obviously I have my thoughts is that no, that's not wrong. I think there becomes a point though, where you start to incentivize like, for example, my son is 40.5 years old. And he gets sad about stuff. And then he will keep thinking about the same thing over and over. He'll get in like loops to a point where he's almost afraid to stop, to put down the emotion because it means he's given up on the thing that makes him sad. And I think in his 4-year-old brain, it's kind of how he views it, where like, I'm mad about this thing. I don't have a solution for it. If I ignore it, then it's not actually a problem. And it is a problem. So I can't ignore it. I think that becomes a problem.
So he latches onto it, and it has to be a big problem.
Yeah, I think there comes a point where it's okay to stop perseverating. There's your $5 word of the day.
Yeah,
perseverating.
perseverating.
That's bothering.
Here's
me.
the sign for it.
Is that really the sign for perseverating?
Yeah, that's like.
You know how to say perseverating in American Sign Language?
Yeah, unfortunately, I did some work at a deaf house for children. There was the deaf cottage on a children's live-in facility, so we were learning sign language at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Would you like to explain what perseverating means then?
Oh, yeah. Constant and almost intrusive thinking about things. Staying on one thought, mulling it over ad nauseum over and over.
Yes, he perseverates.
Yeah.
So I think...
So why then be stoic? And Taylor mentioned it, that there are some times that it's okay to let things go and not perseverate on it. We mentioned a study in 2011 that said you perceive other people as more trustworthy if they have more emotional self-control. But also, on the flip side, we do not say that it is bad. Somebody witnesses a murder and falls on the floor shaking and holding their eyes. That is not bad.
I think I have my final question today that I'm very interested in your response to, Pete. What emotions are worth letting be big?
Oh, that is a good one. In what situations do we then express big emotions? Are you asking about like when would you be okay with seeing my big emotions, or that I could tell you I'm feeling something big and that would be okay?
I think for you, because you try to espouse more of a stoic approach, I find myself curious. Are there times where like this emotion is big and that's appropriate?
This will be one of those pregnant pauses. Um, I just read a email that I sent to my family when I was in Afghanistan on the 10th anniversary of 9/11.
Hmm.
And at that time, I was volunteering at a trauma hospital, and we were loading injured people up into a Red Cross van and taking them to a C-17 or a C-5 cargo plane. And we're flying them up to Ramstein. So I had big emotions all day long, and
Mm-hmm.
there was blood and broken bones, and then I even saw one of the enemy who had blacked out glasses on. He had earplugs in. He had his hands duct taped together, and he was accompanied by an armed Marine. And while I was loading up injured Americans, I saw that guy being taken off into a blacked out van. And take that for what it's worth. That thing happened, and what that meant for me was really, really big emotions. And I carried that heavily throughout the day until I could sit down and type it up into an email. And it was huge to me at the time. As an example, there have been other big emotion times, but I remember taking a long time to write that email because I wanted to express how much it meant to be an American. We took that Taliban guy who had hurt our Americans, took him to the hospital, healed his wounds, interrogated him, fed him, and then we're going to interrogate him some more. And he was the guy who did this. Why? Why didn't we just kill him? It's like, because we're Americans. Because we don't murder people. We are Americans because we're the good guys. And take that. That's being a military member. I sincerely believe that America, in most of the cases, over 50%, we are the good guys because it is logical to be the good guys. We need to be the good guys. And those are big emotions. Your question: when is it okay to feel big emotions? Um, that was okay for me. Um, because I learned from it. I learned so much from it, from analyzing it and looking it over. I think I've mentioned being productive and being unproductive in terms of emotions a couple times. Maybe that's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about. Maybe I'm talking about learning and changing.
Hmm.
Um, Feeling big emotions when you don't learn and you don't change. Um, does it matter? Should you be stoic in those times because having those big emotions won't do anything anyway? Um,
I mean, did you feel if you could go back in time to that day, do you think that you would have thought in the moment, I'm not doing the right thing because I feel these big feelings?
oh no, no. I was so grateful for them, which was a strange thing. I saw this
Hmm.
guy with a bunch of pins coming out of his hip, and he was unconscious, and he was on a litter. And we all lifted 1, 2, 3 up into the thing, and he's just flopping around, and he had a bunch of pins like a erector set, making his hips immovable. And I looked down at his face, and uh, I saw my brother. Like I had this
Hmm.
moment of like, this kid looks like my brother, like my younger brother, and it wasn't angry. I wasn't hateful. It wasn't even that much sadness. It was just big. It was like heaviness. Like, what does this mean? And I'm trying to figure it out. And I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Um, and I don't know why I didn't cry. I was surrounded by people. It was the desert, whatever. But I needed to think about it. I needed to learn from it. And your question was, did I think it was bad?
In the moment, yeah.
I think if I had expressed it differently, if I had started crying and like sat down and told someone, you go at the litter, you take care of it, I can't handle it right now, and I had uncontrollably wept, um, I think that would not have been productive. I
Hmm.
think that I may have learned something about myself I didn't want to learn. I didn't want to think of my ethos as my ethos was demanding that I behave a certain way. I wanted to be a person of a certain character, and My logos was there saying these people need to be moved. They're hurt. But also my pathos was there, and it was strong and it was heavy. I guess I just didn't I didn't ignore it completely. I mean, my pathos was there.
Mm.
Sorry if that makes any sense. I'm going back and forth between these three constructs. I hope they make sense.
It makes sense to me.
But my ethos and my logos were stronger than my pathos in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
They were stronger than my pathos. Even though my pathos was so heavy, I had to put it aside and deal with it later. And to say that it was bad means that my pathos would have had to rise up and overcome both of those other things, which I do think would have been unacceptable to me. I would not have wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
And I know you disagree with me. You probably that like pathos by itself is expression of pathos might have been a virtue.
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I can imagine what it would have been like for me, but one of the ways that I don't know, like it's hard for me to say. This is kind of the antithesis of Stoicism, right? I don't know that I can say that what you did was right or wrong because it's not how I would have done it.
What's the true of any
I don't even know if I would have
philosophy?
done it differently. Yeah.
Any philosophy, that the point of philosophy is to give you a way to think, and so it has to, by nature, define what is preferable and what is not preferable. Any kind of philosophy.
Yeah. It's interesting. When you said that, I thought, well, how would I have responded to that? I don't know that I would have responded in a particularly different way. I do feel a lot of love for America. I do feel a lot of disappointment in America sometimes, but I do love my country deeply and fiercely. In front of my house, I have two flags. I've got an American flag and I've got a pride flag, and neither one of those is coming down because I'm an American.
Yeah.
And you can take it from my cold, dead hands.
Yeah.
Like I am an American and I don't need your permission for that. But I feel like, I hear that story and I go, I'm proud of you for doing what you did, Pete. Like, I think that was the right thing to do. And I feel like what Stoicism on some level does, and the version of Stoicism that people say it is, which is, I think, different from what it actually is. All it really accomplishes when it's done poorly is it takes your emotions and pushes them down the road, but it just keeps on kicking a bigger and bigger can. And at some point you have to deal with it. And it doesn't prepare you in the popular culture sense, the pop psychology sense of Stoicism. It doesn't prepare you to actually deal with it. It just tells you to push it down more and more. And at some point it's going to explode out of you. When it does, if you truly believe that if you truly believe that emotions are bad from other people and they have a big reaction to you, then you have a moral superiority of like, oh, you're reacting big. What's wrong with you? Control yourself.
I see. So you're saying like,
and it becomes
your path. Yeah. Your emotions are getting way out of control. You need to calm down.
Yeah. It becomes problematic.
Yeah. I think Stoicism looks inward more than it looks outward.
Okay.
Personally.
Okay. I think for me to answer my question, I think grief is one of those ones that should be big.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And if it's not, then it's not. That's not to say that should doesn't mean needs to be big. But I think that grief, the obligations to yourself, grief needs to be exactly as big as it is. And if it's big, then it's big. If it's not, it's not. But grief needs to be unencumbered by restriction. Sadness kind of fits in that boat for me as well. Joy, I think big joy should be felt. And I think the obligation to the person feeling it. And then we start getting to like how much Stoicism really allows for these things in the first place and all that. Maybe that's why I feel like at its core, Stoicism, as I have understood it historically, has meant taking what makes you a person and cutting it off to sanitize it for other people.
No. I just don't think every emotion is big. You can feel big curiosity. And it turns obsessive or passionate or whatever you want to call it, but you can feel big curiosity. People don't usually feel that way. We talk about joy and depression. Those can be big. Grief, I mean, immediately when you said grief, I immediately thought, yes, grief is big. Grief is a big emotion. But I just don't think Stoicism, it may flop on the side of restrictive, but it definitely doesn't mean that all emotions are big all the time. And if I'm feeling big emotions all the time, to say that that's acceptable would be exhausting. And I think you'd go to a
Yes.
therapist and be like, the therapist would say, you are energetic about everything you feel. There's no middle ground. They would observe that. It's like, is that preferable to you? I mean, I can't imagine a life having that type of emotional reaction and it being preferable.
Yeah, it could be exhausting.
Yeah. I don't know what philosophy you would follow if you wanted to live that way. I don't know, deep emotional reactions to everything. But Stoicism is not that.
What an interesting conversation that is not in any way, shape, or form at all what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. We've been talking about Stoicism.
I legit was almost like, we should just not even have a thing today because I don't know what I'm going to talk about.
No. I appreciated the topic. At least to give us a target to shoot at. That was pretty good.
Yeah, it was.
Well, thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, man. What a great conversation.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff to chew on. That was really good.
Yeah. Thanks. Love you, Taylor.
Love you, man. I'll talk to you later.